Hello and welcome to another conversation inside 33 Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Michael Abney, and I talk with founders and builders and people creating new things in the world, new perceptions in the world. And a couple of weeks ago, I had a call with Shawn. He's our guest today. Shawn, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We were having a conversation, and I always like to connect and just make sure that we're creating something that's valuable. And I'm always open to exploring out of the box conversations. And today's going to be one of those because today I'm talking with you, who is a respected voice in the hospitality leadership space. And when you were talking about it, I just remember from back in the day, like hospitality. I used to do group events and how I always interacted with hotels in different spaces and how important the hospitality aspect was to what we were creating, because we were creating that space. And we were having a conversation. I'm like, man, you got to come on. You got to talk about this because this is a dying art with like COVID and everybody's like, just, yeah, we're in there. Talk to me about how this started with you and your passion for it, because you've got a podcast with it. And like, this is you are vibing it. And I was all about it. So I can't wait to share this with our listeners.
Yeah,
Thank you for being here.
I've been doing this almost 30 years, so like I've been in the industry for a long time. I left home in not great circumstances and got a job as in hospitality at a hotel, a little hotel. I was a landscaper by trade for my family business, and so I got a job as a handyman at a hotel. And then one night they asked if I had black and whites to work a wedding. I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And so I ended up working a wedding and just fell in love with that aspect of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, that was in Australia. I left Australia, came to Canada. I always say that I matured in Canada. I moved here when I was 26. So I matured here in Canada 20 years ago. And that's when I was like, I got rid of a lot of my friends. Not got rid of, but like I moved on from a lot of my friends in Australia where I wasn't hanging out every weekend after working a 12-hour shift to party. I came here and I was like, okay, well, I need to pay rent and I need to do adult stuff. And so the industry has been really good to me, and so I want to make sure that the industry has been good to me over almost 30 years, as I'm going to be good to that. So that's kind of why I keep sort of pushing myself to evolve to be better.
Yeah, we're all sort of doing that in our own way inside of a world that's constantly changing, and outside events are affecting how we behave. And like that was the thing that really excited me about having this conversation, because there's just a world that's so easily forgot. Like when it drops out, it's really hard to get back in there, because there used to be a way that we used to be with each other when we were traveling, and it was just different. It was an experience. And now it's like survival of the fittest. So on all levels. But like what was the thing that you knew the value of what this is, what you're talking about, your level of expertise? And what was that moment that you knew that this was more than you just being the operator of it? It was you turning into a teacher and a mentor for people.
So I'm an ex-military brat. So my dad was ex-military. So my upbringing was very like, yes sir, no sir, three bags full sir sort of like mentality and growing up. And that's great for that era and my work ethic and all those sort of things. That's fantastic. And when I got into the industry, I tended to sort of like mimic my father in the way that I handled staff. Then came up to like just before the pandemic, I was in I really went outside my comfort zone. I moved to Singapore for 6 months and opened up 3 venues in Singapore, which is a completely different culture. I had to change a lot of my ways when it came to speaking to people, just purely because of the way that culture is. And you've got little subcultures within the Singaporean community. The builders for our restaurants were Chinese, so the Chinese culture tends to build up a relationship before they even start talking about business. So you've got a certain amount of time. You're like, okay, well, I got to get this place built, but I got to make a relationship with the Chinese operators, and then Singaporeans themselves. In the hospitality industry is very different there, so I have to like almost take it back to like bare bones. So I put myself out of the comfort zone there, and then of course the pandemic happened, and that's when I think the light bulb went off during the pandemic, because I still saw so many operators pushing the turn to burn, the toxic culture, that sort of thing. We were talking about it more. I think we were talking about it more in the industry than we've ever talked about it, but it didn't seem like it was pushing for change. And that was a big thing for me, is that I truly thought coming out of the pandemic, we were going to be able to move away from these sort of conversations in a way that things were changing so we didn't have to talk about it anymore. So fast forward, the pandemic finished up, we started rolling again, and I still saw the exact same behaviors and the exact same cultures, the exact same mentality to turn and burn staff, the exact same mentality to staff retention. And I'm just like, we had a great opportunity as an industry to change, like to do fundamental changes for our industry. And I think we flaunted the opportunity. I think a lot of us, and don't get me wrong, there are some people out there that are really doing fantastic things in the industry. I'm being generalistic when it comes to this, but like in the grand scheme of things, the big chunk of operators are still behaving the same way. The one thing that blew my mind was that operators were giving like signing bonuses just to get staff. So now we're in this position, and every year we talk about it more and more. Is like, oh well, we can't get staff. The generation of today, like all these excuses of like outward excuses of why we can't get people, and no one's going, hey, maybe I'm a bit of a bad operator. I was going to swear, but I didn't know. I'm going to try not to swear on your podcast. I swear way too much on my podcast and my seminars. But like,
it's okay if it pops out.
there's not a lot of inward looking when we talk about these things. It's always it's the staff's fault. It's the generation's fault. It's the culture's fault. Instead of going, hey, maybe my culture is not good. Maybe it's not healthy. Maybe I'm doing something that I'm not being transparent with my staff. And so that's where my screaming in the void for the last like 2 years, 3 years has been of like, hey, we got to look after our people, and we just got to stop doing these questions like, oh, what if they leave? I'm like, well, what if they stay? Like, that's my biggest thing. Is like, I get the what if they leave mentality from so many operators. I'm like, well, what if they stay? What if they stay with you for 10 to 15 years? Why would you not want that? Like, do you know how much it costs to replace staff? And so it's really something that I feel strongly about, because I do believe that we can build an industry where people stay long-term in your venues. I do believe that you can build something that every other industry has. Like, this is not something that's crazy different to any other industry. Tech companies, finance, oil and gas, like carbon, like every other industry has long-term staff. But for some reason now in the hospitality industry, we just slap on the transient nature of staff onto everybody, when there's plenty of career people out there that need to be nurtured and like given a journey to explore.
Yeah, it's almost it feels like a panic when you're talking about the experience that you're having with these guys. There was when I've coached businesses and teams for 30 years, and there's a saying that I use all the time: the fish always stinks from the head down in any organization. And I'm just, I'm curious. I love what you said about nobody's looking on the inner. That's true. And I know how hard it is to herd cats into that space, because that's kind of what it feels like sometimes. But have you had people that said, yeah, it is inner? Like, do you go there with people? Like, how does that, if that's the thing, what are we doing is it happening in the world?
It is. It is happening. And I think I do still get a lot of pushback whenever I post something on social media. I get a little bit of like DMs and stuff going, well, training, that sort of thing. But I think we need to start looking at it. I'm going to keep banging the drum. I have had people sit down and go, how can I fix this? And I'm like, well, when we talk about restaurants failing, we talk about, oh, we couldn't get guests, or it's the neighborhood, or it's the rent, or it's the rising cost. And very rarely are we talking that the people that are supposed to be making us the money are the ones that we tend not to look after. And that's usually why restaurants fail. And so I think for me, when I really have these conversations, firstly, it's an abrupt like slap in the face. It isn't something that I can be soft about. But when you start putting it into dollar and cents, I think once you put anything into money when it comes to the hospitality industry, it automatically goes, oh, okay, well, if I can save money, because it costs costs $2,500 to $3,500 per person every time you replace someone. Like, that's minimum. That's like bare minimum for like your entry-level server bartender job.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like the training, the onboarding, the advertising,
Yeah.
the interviewing, like, it adds up. So if you've got 80% turnover, you're already spending $250,000 a year. And the thing is that it is in the gray area. It's not the black and white. It's not something that's tangible like other industries that can be measured.
Yeah.
It is in the gray area. And so once you start putting these dollar figures down, for the owners, they're like, oh, damn, okay, well, okay, I am spending money. And then on the flip side of that, when I say, like, how do you start keeping staff and engaging staff and that sort of thing? So I've got a system where it's like how to sit down and give your staff a career journey with you for 3 years, and how do you set up your management to give them a journey. So here's 12 audiobooks. I want you to listen to one a month. At the end of the month, you and my management team will sit down. We'll talk about this audiobook that I gave you, and I'll buy it and give it to you. And I want you to listen to it and bring your perspective on that audiobook. And then that way, your management team is growing with you too. Because usually when you get to management, like, the training thing sort of falls off because you're at that peak. And so once you start getting into that, like, you start talking about like $3 a person per shift, like, or $5 per person per shift. And that is nothing in regards to ROI. So once you start, and that's the problem I think with the hospitality industry, is like, even with, I posted a video just the other day, and a few people came back and said, oh, you can't put a number to it. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah, you can.
That's fantastic. But you have to. Because if you don't, it's kind of like losing a can opener in the junk drawer. You know you had a can opener. You've thrown in the junk drawer because that's where it goes. So when you can't find it, you're just going to buy another can opener. And that's the sort of thing what happens when you don't put a dollar figure to these things, is that it just gets thrown into the junk drawer and not thought about, and you'll just go buy another can opener, and that'll cost you money. And so I said, you have to put that dollar figure to. If you want to go higher than what my number is, knock yourself out. If you want to say $5,000 a person, go for it. You can't say it's an unquantifiable number when it is a quantifiable number. And when you know that number, then you become more cognizant of, like, oh, if I lose this person, this is how much it's going to cost me to replace them.
Yeah. Just, it's like,
I get
so
very
thoughts.
passionate.
No. You, like, we're all mirrors of each other. That's why I fucking love the stuff I'm doing right now. It's because it's just like, it opens things up that I literally never saw coming. So I worked with the company last year, and it was about their management team and working with them, and how working with them, I just go wherever I need to go, because if that person needs something and I can help them with it, I'm going to do that. And, the conversations get really deep and human. But it's also, they have nobody to talk to. So like the employee and their humanness and everything they've got to deal with in the world, that all gets put in the back burner, and they have to show up and wonder why they're burnt out, irritable, like all of the stuff that makes them non-productive and not really, they're not giving what a company wants to be given to their client experience, because the barrier is they're handling so much stuff with no tools to handle it. And what I offer, and now I know you're offering it too, which is awesome, is like, look inside, like what's the belief that you're walking around with that's just no longer serving you right now. And the ultimate is to get that machine of humans, the network of all of it, to be producing a result that benefits everybody. And if you're not looking inside, you are going to be in just, it's not going to work. You're not getting at the core of it. And that costs money. And it's easy to quantify when you're losing. But it's so weird for folks to think about quantifying what having a whole human being at your space where you're working, how valuable that is. And as a human aspect, just imagine removing the money if the money was just gone and we were having a different same conversation, but without that frigging thing of money in the way, then we could just have a conversation like, oh my God, you're a human. I want you to win and work and us to be a family. Because I don't go out to very many restaurants anymore, because I just got, and I'm realizing it now that I'm talking to you, I go to these family ones that I know and have known for a long time, that the price is not irrelevant. They have the same waiters and waitresses that I've known. I get to know them. They come by and stay, even if they're not waiting on me. They come and hang out like that. It's a Brazilian family restaurant. Best food in the world. It's the same. They don't change it. But I just like, there's something about that I don't even think about it. Somebody says, where you want to go? I'm thinking those places, not the shiny new ones that just open up that cost, X to go there. That's no more than going to the Brazilian place, but it's the experience that I'm getting with the people that I'm working or inside that space with, other than just charging you $150 for a nice,
and robotic service. No. And I think that comes down, like, it's even more so in the hospitality industry, because if you've got all that stuff going on in your life, you've got to come to work and you've got to put your face on and you've got to be on stage, as a lot of people say, you've got to be on stage, and the stuff that you've been dealing with has to be put into the back burner and you've got to be face. And so, like, even when I have conversations with my team, if someone's acting out and having, like, seems like they're biting people's heads off and it's abnormal, I would never go to them to talk to them about work stuff. My first question is, are you okay outside of this place? Outside of this space, are you doing okay? Is something going on? Did you break up with your girlfriend? Or your partner? Did the landlord say they're going to raise your rent and that's stressing you out? Like, what's going on? Way before I start talking about their behavior within my four worlds, inside my world. And so I think that's something that it's even harder in hospitality, because we do have to, like can be absolutely miserable and you have to go to work. And
how inauthentic. Yeah. Like, there's no bigger barrier to human connection than inauthenticity. None of us know anybody else's story. And especially when you go to a restaurant, you're not thinking about where your waiter, whatever there's going on with them, or most people don't. But the reality is that's going on with everybody, especially in people that are not. You could be making $100,000 in the U.S. right now and still be scared.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So, like, what's the digs? Like, what's happening that you see that is giving you, is there anything that's giving you hope? Is there anything that's making you like, this is gelling? I know that feeling of talking into a
screaming
wall.
Into a void.
You see how, yeah. And it's like, is anybody there? Is there anybody on this platform? Is there anybody wanting the feedback? It's so vital to us.
The clients that I've got definitely come on. The clients that I've got have definitely come on board with sort of like it's a upside down pyramid where, like, okay, let's talk about costings and forensic accounting. Let's talk about like offerings and bar operations, and then the very end is a culture tip. It is something that is, again, culture is such an intangible thing. Like, I'm not a rah sort of like motivational speaker sort of person. Like, I'm very much like, put these things in, again, it goes back to my military dads, like, put these things in place and things are going to be better. I'm not a very like rah sort of guy. I'm a little bit more blunt, and so I'm a quiet taste, I suppose, when it comes to like my opinions and how I put them across. But I do think the industry is going to get better, and the people that are successful, because as we've always had very tight profit margins in the industry, and as those margins tighten further and further, you've got to look at the whole operation and see how you can make more money. So if training can give you an extra $3 per head per person for every single cover you have, and you're a restaurant that does 200 covers on a Friday night, like, that's a chunk of coin. Now it's in the grand scheme, in that one moment, it's a couple of $100. It's $1,000 extra a night.
It's a compound.
But it's the compound. So it's $30,000 a month. If you open every day of the week, like $30,000 a month could be your rent. Like, let's just think about these little things, like training your staff to get $3 per head spend more out of every single guest you have could pay your rent. It's
that takes
it's the most minuscule amount of money. Like, so when I'm talking about $3 per head, I'm going to go cocktail bar sort of like thing, because that's my sort of niche. So I do 5 courses in the first year of your employment. So Bar Smarts Online, which is a very good online base bartending, servers, buses, chefs, everybody does it. so they kind of understand the culture that we're trying to build. We do Edinburgh Whiskey Academy certifications out of Edinburgh. They're fantastically deep online courses in gin, Irish whiskey, and Scotch. So those are 3. That's less than $500 per person. And then WSET 1 in spirits. So it's a really good baseline level for spirits. So that's the first 5 courses. Those will cost you about $900 a staff member. So if you're open 300 days a year, so we're taking out holidays and stat holidays and those sort of things, it's $3 per staff member per shift. That is it. $3. And I can guarantee you they'll probably put $10 per shift in more to pay you back. So your ROI is 300+%. But like when you break it down to the cents, an owner of mine years ago said, watch the cents, the dollars will look after themselves. So when you break it down that much and show what your ROI could be, and you were talking like, okay, let's use that $30,000 a month number. So we're talking at $360,000 more in top line revenue every year for a $3 per head spend increase per head.
Oh.
That's live or die sort of money for restaurants. That's live or die. We're talking about $3 per head, per shift, per seat, compounded every year. You could be going from lights are staying turned off and you're doing a midnight run to staying open and expanding. It really is just cents in the dollar. Now that I've just done that math in my head now, this is the first time I've actually done my math that much, and I'm just like,
that's a lot.
Why aren't people listening to me more?
Well, it's just it's perception. One of my first businesses was I did hair, and I'm like, oh, I'm really good at this. I'll just open a business and it'll be great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I did not know how to run a business. And then nobody told me that it had a 10% profit margin on a good day. I had no context for that because I was a hairdresser. I always had money in my pocket. I didn't even think about it. I'm like, oh, there's just going to be more if I do more, right? No. But like what saved my ass whenever I realized this, because I got a coach. And that was like, if you're going to stay in business, you have to sell retail. Mm-hmm. It has a 50% margin. But I couldn't do that. That had to be done by the people, the hairdressers. So I'm not a salesperson. All of that. I'm like, you're not selling. You're like, do you want them to go home and use Walmart stuff on their hair after you just spent, $200 getting it to this level? Yeah, you're doing them a disservice. Like, it's just a conversation that's really difficult to get in when somebody's got a fixed idea about how that it works. But my God, if you don't do that with and most hospitalities don't run on margins. You're exactly right. I mean, run on really low margins. Yeah. So, it's such a crucial aspect. And you just really opened my eyes about that dollar amount, about how something little compounded makes a huge impact. That's just at the dollars. Imagine just small impacts with like the humanness of whoever is on your staff. And I'm sure there is a reason why at the restaurants I go to, there's the same waiters that are there continuance, because it becomes like a family. You can't help it because of what you got to go through to actually serve.
Mm-hmm. And service is transactional. Hospitality is where you can, like, if you're true at hospitality, and when we talk about, like, we've just talked about, like, operators making more money, but 20% of that's going to go to the staff that's doing the upselling. So, like, you start compounding that for a server as well. So try and do that when I'm doing training. I'm like, if you're good at what you do, you will make 20% more, like, you'll make 20% of all that extra money you make. And then they're like, oh, okay, I get it. Coming from Australia was different because I didn't grow up with tips. So when I came to Canada to work, I just did everything based on hospitality because I was like, I don't care about the tips. That's not something that quantifies in my brain. We made pretty much the same amount of money per hour in Australia as we did I was doing it in Canada when I came here. And I was like, and then I'd be making really banging tips. Like other servers, like, how are you making so much money on a Tuesday lunch? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just giving.
Not thinking about it.
Like, I'm just doing. I'm just doing
a service. That's what a tip's for.
Yeah, without the expectation of tips. But tipping culture, that's a whole different episode, is massive in North America. But you got to look at that. Like, if you upsell, for every dollar you upsell, you get 20 cents. And yes, when you talk about it like just in like that, but you compound that over a year, you've made yourself another 10, 15, 20 grand in a year, which is a good raise. That's a very, very good raise in any industry.
It is. But it's almost like that tip's expected without the hospitality. That's the part that is difficult. And I know everybody's hurting and everything, but I just became aware of, I had a friend over and he had ordered some Uber stuff, and it came, and the lady knocked on the door. I'm like, why the hell are they knocking on the door? Why are they just leaving it? And he's like, oh, I didn't leave a tip on the thing. So they're like bringing it to the door. So they will literally bring it to the door because you didn't put the tip. They won't say anything, but it's like,
It is a very odd thing.
But like, it is really like tips were something that you did because you had gotten extraordinary service. You know, like the what's that one show with the people on the boat? You know, and they do the charter cruises on one of the channels. You know, and they give them like $30,000 tips for everybody. But it's I love that.
I think hospitality has changed post-pandemic too, because I think the biggest issue we're finding is that the pandemic pushed a lot of like late 20s to mid 30s operators, like managers and older senior staff, out. They were like, well, screw this shit. I'm out. I'm going to be a real estate broker or get into coding or XYZ. So now there's a big gap of like people my age who not necessarily would be in the trenches on a daily basis, and like early to mid 20s. So a lot of the kids I hired out of the pandemic, they've been working in the same venue for like 5 years. They started when they were 22. Now I'm using one example. He's going on 27. He's only been at that venue, and he's been under me, which has been great. He's like learned that sort of mentality. But like, there's a lot of venues where it's almost like a reset to 15 years ago, where you've got people who are sort of finding their own way, and so the hospitality element of like that training and passing down of verbal knowledge has sort of had a massive gap in the post-pandemic world, and that is what I think is missing. And we just need to get a lot of these younger generations onto that sort of like why we're doing it, especially if you're going to do it for the rest of your life. Like, if you're going to do this for the rest of your life, day in, day out, you may as well maximize everything you do and everything you feel and everything you put across to the guest, and make sure that it's the best thing possible.
How do you do that with them? Like, do you get them clear on what their why is?
Well, I try always get everybody on Simon Sinek's start with the why, because I think in hospitality, if you ask people why you're in it, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be like, well, it's flexible hours or it's good money. And it's very rarely like, I want to be a part of this experience for someone who's coming to my place for the very first time. And again, it's one of those intangible gray area things that we live in this industry, that we just assume. We assume that people that are coming in the industry are doing it for that reason. And some people get in the industry, especially in my niche, because they really love cocktails. They love making cocktails. They love geeking out about cocktails. Are they talking about sports and politics over the bar? No, they'll geek out with someone about cocktails, but there's just different reasons people get into it. And I think sometimes you go sit down with your team and just like, okay, team,
dig.
This is why we're doing it, and elevating that. And sometimes I think we go through life, especially in hospitality, that it's just the gray area that we just assume, and assumptions make an ass out of you and me. So it's just one of those things that you've got to sort of regurgitate, and you sometimes think, oh, as an older generation, you go, this is just stupid. Why am I telling people how to do this? It should just be common knowledge, and common knowledge is just not something we have.
It's not
anymore.
No,
like, it's just not.
That's why I was so That's why I was so hell-bent on you coming here and having this conversation, because it's not out there. It is something that I think people have just accepted is gone, and this is the way it is now. It's just kind of how we normalize or get, there's all the things on fire, so it's like, how is this even important now? But it actually is important, and that's why we're having this conversation. So I appreciate it.
A normalization post-pandemic is something that we've, like, would we have been used to planes being delayed or late or cancelled as much now, like as much before the pandemic as we are now? Because during the pandemic, it was like the norm. And now airlines are like, well, we've pushed out that barrier of people getting pissed off at us much further. Grocery prices, like tons of grocers are making really big bank profits and everybody's getting bonuses. But, during the pandemic, we raised the prices. They never sprung back for anything.
What? Are they high there too? Like where you're in British Columbia, right? Yeah. So that it is. Yeah, it's weird seeing people's like faces like when you go, I'm horrified sometimes when I go go to the store and I'm like, oh my God, I used to have a whole cart. It was like $70 and now it's like 170 and I can see through it. So but like seeing people's faces and like that unspoken, you could just feel it. You can just feel it. Yeah, we are going through a crazy time everywhere. But out of it, I know something amazing is going to happen because it's just how the universe works too. And it takes people like you, like standing up for something that you're bringing what you know to this generation, and somebody will kick it and carry it on. That's just how it works. One thing I want to share with you is just as an add-on. When somebody says that about the money, just pop the next question like, what's that money for? Mm-hmm. And that'll get them to the why. And then that's where you'll bridge it back to whatever they're doing. And that why is possible because of this. And it could be even more like it's like that. Yeah. See, I love what you're doing.
I'm the opposite.
Go ahead.
Mine's always about the why. And then the money's a secondary thing. My wife hates it because mine is like, I want to make the industry better. Am I getting paid for that? I'm getting there now. But for a long time, I was like, I'm going to do it free. I want to help you. 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 How much am I charging? Nothing. I just want to help you. So I've always been like complete opposite.
You got to allow that to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Universe is cyclical. It's like it's a give and take of the same thing. It's the same kind. So if you're putting all that out, tell your wife, you're just going to relax and allow that all to come back to you because that's how it works. If you don't, you get back problems. That's what back problems are money, especially lower coming in. Yeah. So, man, I appreciate this conversation. It just felt like, just like needed to be talked about. So I'm glad you had that with me today. I appreciate it. I love the idea of using all of the resources that are available to us. And as somebody that's getting up there, I want to share my wisdom with anybody that will listen and help figure out like the things that we thought were going to save us. It's obvious that they're not. And it's up to us speaking up and saying the thing that needs to be said and moving on. And let's just, evolve out of all of this.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, but I do want you to answer one final question. If somebody is listening and carrying the weight of like leading people in an industry, kind of maybe it's another industry, not hospitality, but they're having the same crux that we're having because like the old meeting the new and how that, building the bridges to what was to what's going to become. Like, what would you give them? What would you want them to know right now?
Take a breath and then put yourself in their shoes. I know it's an old adage, but 9 times out of 10, especially with the younger generation, the newer generations, you can set a goal, but you're on 2 different paths to get to that goal. And your path you may seem as right, but they also see their path as right. If you're going towards the same goal, that's the main thing. But how do you sort of bridge that gap between their path and your path to make sure that you sort of align a little bit more on that way to that goal? And I think that's sometimes the hardest thing with the older generation of leaders is that we don't look at the next generation down and see how they're computing in their brain. You could be great with goal setting, but like, how are you crossing that barrier and aligning to get to that goal together at the same time?
Yeah, at the same time, together.
Yep.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Shawn, for sharing your information and your passion with us. I can't imagine somebody listening to this. I'd be like wanting to call you and like, hey, come take care, like come work my team. And also, I would love to watch that in action. That's the total opposite of, not tearing people down like that. We all know whoever that guy is. I don't even remember what his name is right now. Ramsey, I think is his name. But like having somebody come in and like love somebody up and like the human side of it is extraordinary. So I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us. And this is an amazing conversation, a little bit out of the box, but I know it's valuable for everybody that's listening. And I thank you for listening to another conversation inside of this amazing podcast, 33 Conversations. And guess what? We're going to see you on the next one. Bye, guys.